Sanyal, over the, India has really led the world in digital transformation through very flawless execution. And it has really transformed the millions of Indians, average citizens' lives. Now, having done the India Stack 1.0, how do you see India Stack 2.0 emerging? And how do you think it will be different from India Stack 1.0?
Thank you, Rangnath, and thank you to DATE for inviting me to come here. It's a pleasure to see all of you here. And a big thank you to Tejasvi for allowing me to steal his handkerchief, which looks very cool, so he's not getting it back now. Let me say that the India Stack approach is a particularly interesting one, so let me explain why. You see, India is quite unique in having thought about certain kinds of digital assets as being public goods, as opposed to private goods. So what happened is that we created this layer of technology as commons, so to speak, whether it is the JAM Trinity and various, the UPI payment system, whatever, these things as essentially public goods, provided it free, and allowed India's entrepreneurs, innovators, technologists, etc., to take it to the next level. We can invent. So I'm going to talk about one which I'm passionate about. I'm sure there are others, and I don't want to get into a long discussion on it. But I'll give you an example of one really interesting thing we can do in the 2.0, which is to essentially create a three-dimensional digital twin for the whole country. So let me tell you how this would work. Let's take a city like Delhi. Let's say we create a complete three-dimensional digital twin. Now remember, we already have a two-dimensional digital twin in terms, well, Mapples, Google Maps. These are all actually two-dimensional digital twin. But if we had a three-dimensional one, it will allow you to do some incredible things. For example, we could map all our underground and even above ground utilities onto this. We could map, for example, every single building, every single tree, and we could map all our property rights into it. So essentially, once you have this as a digital twin, you can do all kinds of things that you would like to. And if we provided it as a public good, i.e., this is a digital twin provided publicly, freely to everybody, and then entrepreneurs can populate that space depending on the usage they want. So for example, those who provide utilities, they know exactly where the wires go, where the pipes go, where the whatever else goes, where the underground tunnels for the metro is. And so all of this is connected not just in the underground, but into every single building across the country. And by the way, this is not a very difficult thing to do. The technology for this already exists. Interestingly, there are a couple of experiments going on this. One of them, oddly enough, surprise, surprise, is happening in the northeastern end of India in Kohima. We actually already have a digital twin of the city of Kohima. And we can do all kinds of things. It's not a static thing even. It's actually dynamic. So we can do simulations of the traffic in Kohima. So if we want to change something in the traffic system of Kohima, we have already experimented by essentially trying to run the traffic in a different way. And you see, we have this digital twin being updated every few years, and it is being done with 1 centimeter level of precision. So much so that you can actually see the growth of trees on it. So after 6 months, if you refresh it, if anything more than 1 inch, it can see. 1 centimeter, sorry, 1 centimeter it can see. So illegal constructions, for example, all I have to do is compare 6 months back and today. Anything more than 1 centimeter I've done, I can see all the illegal constructions. They're able to tell you which pole supplies electricity to which house. You can clearly see how much is being stolen by whom, who has not paid their bills. Everything is mappable to this 3D sort of twin. In fact, they even done some interesting things of future things that can be done. For example, there is a road from Dimapur Airport to Kohima city. It's a relatively new road.
Right.
It's still unstable. As you know, the Himalayas are an unstable landscape. And there are regular rock falls that happen. There is, in fact, a YouTube or a Twitter much shared video of a rock coming down, hitting a car and knocking it out. So the people who are running this digital twin, they have actually flown drones over the entire route and used ground penetrating radar to figure out where are the places where future rock falls can happen and simulated them. And the best bit of this is there are 4 young kids sitting in a government building in Kohima who are doing all of this with a budget of 1.5 crores.
Wow. Wow.
They are printing their own drones and flying them around. They are capable of doing things some very large companies in the world are not capable of doing. And they're just 4 kids who are doing this. And so, yeah, just to give you an example of the kinds of things we can do with the next level of India Stack.
Wonderful. I think it almost sounded like a metaverse project for India, Stack 2.0. Stack 1.0 was primarily led as a government initiative, whether it is UPCI, whether it is Aadhaar. In Stack 2.0, do you see the role of the private sector, young entrepreneurs be significantly higher than India's Stack 1.0?
See, it is not a government project. Yes, there's a public goods aspect to it, and therefore the government has to anchor it. Yeah. But do remember that many of those who drove it were actually from the private sector.
True.
People like Nandan Nilekani,
yes.
right? So it is a national effort. Yeah. It is not a government effort. And obviously the private sector has to be participant in this in multiple ways.
Correct.
And even once the infrastructure, the stack has been built, yes, its usage and the leveraging is a private sector activity. I mean, it is there for the private sector to leverage. It's not there for the government to leverage only. I mean, the government will use it, of course. Absolutely. But the joy of what the first India Stack did happened because the private sector took it and ran with it.
Absolutely.
So this will be true of India's 2.0 as well.
Thank you. You know, transitioning from metaverse to AI. Now, we're in the midst of AI revolution. There are many schools of thought in India and outside. Should it be regulated? Should it not be regulated? Should it be is there any need for moderating it? I know that, you have been working on AI regulation. And what are your thoughts on AI regulation? How does India want to lead the world in showcasing how to regulate and not to regulate AI?
So this is obviously a very big topic. And I think I'm not going to get into the argument of why it should be regulated. I think people are now coming around. Most sensible people now recognize that it needs some regulation is needed. The question is, how do we do it? There are obvious dangers from AI, and different countries in the world have attempted to do this in different ways. And I'll give you, at the risk of oversimplifying, there is a range of things that are being done. So one end of the spectrum is the US-UK approach, which is largely a laissez-faire approach to regulating. Basically, it's self-regulation. Although the Biden administration has come out with various executive orders recently, if you really read them, it basically boils down to self-regulation.
True.
And sure, self-regulation means that you can do a lot of new innovations. Right. So that is the advantage. But self-regulation in any field, whether it's in AI or in medical areas or in any other field, very often runs its own dangers. I mean, what is the incentive of self-regulators to regulate themselves? There isn't very much.
Yeah.
And so self-regulation in the end doesn't work. It doesn't work in financial markets. It's not going to work here. Right. So in my view, that is not a form of regulation at all. Right. The other extreme is entire state control as being the form of regulation.
Right.
Now, this too, sadly, is not going to work. And this is the approach that the Chinese are taking. Right. Okay, the state owns the ultimate stick. Right. You're going to use a bureaucratic system to stamp its authority on the AI system. And let me tell you, this too will fail for the same reason, that because there is no reason why a bureaucratic system will be able to keep track of this any more than it was able to keep track of the Wuhan virus.
Right, right.
After all, by all indications, the coronavirus was a lab leak.
Right.
And if that is what it was, well, the same control systems that couldn't, I'm sure there were control systems in the Wuhan lab, but they failed.
Yes.
This will also happen here.
Right.
Right? Just when you want it to succeed, it will fail.
Right.
Then there is a third approach, which the Europeans are trying to do, which is somewhere in between the two. Here, they are trying to impose top-down regulation, bureaucratically, but not the kind that the Chinese are doing. So their approach is that we will do a top-down regulation, but what we will do is we of risk.
I see.
So it's risk-based approach. Now here, I can understand that civil servant sitting in Brussels can tell that, you don't want AI to run your nuclear weapons program. Yeah, that's obvious. But beyond that, very quickly you will run out of ability to tell what to do.
Yes.
Because the fact is that the evolution of AI is a complex adaptive system.
Right.
There are butterfly effects, unintended
Right.
consequences. It can go in any direction. This system is based on some genius ability of Brussels technocrats to be able to know where this is going to go, which they can't do by definition. So therefore, how are they going to do? The point is that you may have what may be entirely benign systems that may go rogue.
Right.
But there's no way of knowing what they are.
Right.
So in your risk-based assessment, you may say it is benign, but in reality, this may go wrong.
Right.
Because actually, we already regulate other complex adaptive systems which do unintended things, but we regulate it without the need to predict where it is going to go. And I'll give you one example of it. Financial systems, right? We regulate financial systems, but does the regulator SEBI need to predict where the stock market is going to go? No. Does it need to predict where these technologies, business models, etc. will go? No. And yet we have developed protocols for regulating these things. So what do? We create, what does the SEBI do? It demands transparency of accounts.
Yeah.
It demands choke points. It has systems of doing manual shutdowns. Those are circuit breakers.
True.
It has the ultimate manual shutdown, which is bankruptcy and insolvency.
Yes.
And then it has a bunch of people who have skin in the game, which is the directors, and creates accountability. All
Right.
of these things are there.
Right.
So you need to create the equivalent for the AI system.
Right.
You need a dedicated regulator who understands the technology, and instead of wasting time predicting where it will go, pays attention to how it is evolving.
Right.
You need manual overrides, just like you need circuit breakers in the financial markets.
Right.
You need skin in the game and ex ante accountability.
Right.
Just like you have the boards in the company who are accountable, you need to make sure that AI and its behavior, whoever the creators are, whoever the companies developing are, ex ante, you create skin in the game. You have to enforce regular audits.
Right.
And just like you need to explain your business model and your accounts, you need to explain what AI is doing.
Yes.
So you need standards of explainability.
Right.
So all of these things have parallels in the financial world, and you need to apply it to the AI evolution.
I mean, I think as you narrate this, when do you think a full-fledged regulatory framework and institutions that you outline in the AI regulation will be put into place?
So it will evolve. I think it'll happen reasonably fast. We took quite some time to get the privacy bill and all those things in place. But finally, I think we did the right thing. We were relatively faster on the drone regulations.
Right.
I would argue that we have put in place perhaps the best, most really good balance between technology evolution
Right.
and airspace regulation in our drone regulation.
Right.
So India actually has now developed very good capability in being able to
Right.
sensibly manage this space.
Right.
And I think we have done this even in areas like, medical regulation and so on.
Right.
We are now evolving good protocols for patenting and so on as well.
Right.
And I think the approach that I just put forward is a completely different approach from what virtually any other country in the world is doing.
Right.
So once we begin to think along these lines and begin, I think we will end up with a good protocol for how we develop technology, AI regulation, and possibly we may be pioneers in this space.
Absolutely. I think, you mentioned the word rogue multiple times while discussing the AI piece. On Web3 and crypto, a narrative has been created as a scandalous industry so far. But the underlying technology has deep potential, especially blockchain. How do you see, how will you see this blockchain really developing in India? What are some of the applications that you see from top-down point of view? Where exactly can the new entrepreneurs and even the current existing legacy industries could embrace blockchain?
So this whole thing about blockchain has unfortunately ended up getting hijacked by the cryptocurrency conversation. You see, what is a cryptocurrency? It's actually not a currency at all.
Right.
See, there's a generation of tokens, and the other is blockchain. So what is blockchain? Well, it is a form of ledgering, distributed ledger, and algorithmic token generation. Now, the technology shift was in the ledgering. Algorithmic token generation is nothing very new. I mean, you can somebody creates an equation. Based on that equation, you generate tokens. You can also generate any other thing with it. There's nothing particularly new.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, marrying the two, people began to claim that the algorithmic token generation was the innovation. It's not.
Correct.
I mean, there are many ways of generating tokens using some equation. I mean, I can create a simple one that we will today generate, we will issue the number of tokens depending on what today's date is, right? Today's date is X day of this month of this year, and so many tokens will be. Now, that is an algorithm you can't break.
Right.
And you can exactly tell how many tokens will be issued into the far future.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean it's an innovation.
Correct.
So my view is, people were unfortunately confusing these two. So I was of the view right from the beginning that even if you're generating these tokens as assets, they are not currencies. It is not money.
Right.
It is an asset if you really want to consider it. And then since it's just a digital asset, you should tax it like any assets.
Right. Right.
And that is why impose taxes on it.
Correct. Correct.
But the other part of it, which is the distributed ledger part, well, there are many uses for it.
Right.
It's a ledgering system. You can keep track of cows with it if you wish.
Right.
But as far as a digital currency is concerned, my view is you can keep track of the rupee with it also.
Right.
So we issue the rupee in many formats. We issue it as a coin. You issue it as a note in paper. You issue it as already in digital electronic format in your bank account, in a wallet. We will also issue it in Bitcoin. Sorry, not Bitcoin, but distributed ledger compatible format.
Yeah.
But it will still be a rupee.
Yeah.
It will still be issued by the central bank. Yeah. It will be a central bank issued digital currency.
Right.
But it's still a rupee.
Right.
All that is happening is that it is now compatible to a distributed ledger. Now, this allows you to do something special because unlike with a normal rupee, which is fungible across all uses, this rupee can give in certain characteristics that it'll be like taking a note and saying that can only be used for
Right.
XYZ, or you can keep track of its
Right.
usage, for example, for trade finance.
Right.
There are certain uses for it. You can also do other things. I mean, for example, you can give out education vouchers with it
Right.
and other things. But it's still a rupee.
Right. Right.
It's not a new
Correct.
token.
Correct.
So given that that is the context, I would say that there are uses for blockchain technology, but please do not confuse it with cryptocurrencies.
Right. No, thank you. Just today on everyone's mind is really, as India kind of transitions to a 5 trillion or 10 trillion economy, how does India achieve its energy independence? I know there are many initiatives from the government and also from the private sector on hydrogen cell and finding alternative to lithium and so on and so forth. What do you think should be the focus of India, purely from technology standpoint, over the next 4 or 5 years, purely from energy independence standpoint?
See, the gods have unfortunately not blessed India with hydrocarbons. So we have relatively little petroleum and gas. We have a little bit of coal. It's not the best quality, but we have some of it. But even that will not suffice for the uses we want. So for India to want to move on to alternative energy sources is not merely because it's good for the environment and so on. From a purely economic, commercial perspective, we need to move on because the gods have blessed India with lots of sunshine, but not much natural gas.
Right.
Okay. So let's be very clear on this. Now comes the question is, what do we do with this? How do we take advantage of this? And okay, let's take solar, for example. Now, we have lots of sunshine, but the problem with solar is the obvious one. You have cloudy days, you have to use it at night and so on. Even here, the gods, and we get most sunshine, so we can use it the most. But even then, what do you do at night?
Right.
And what do you do for the 2-3 weeks of height winter, where also we get another spike because of needs for warming?
Yeah.
So what do you do? So here comes the issue of storage, which is really the really big. I mean, there is the problem of generation, but the real big problem for us is the problem of storage.
Yeah.
Now here, you mentioned lithium. Oddly enough, India actually has lots of lithium. We have just discovered lots of it in various parts of the country.
Yeah.
Jammu Kashmir also, but in other places as well. Even Nagaland and other places has lots of it. The problem is that lithium is actually not a very efficient way of storing electricity.
Yeah.
Its main advantage is that it is light. So it is a useful thing for mobile storage, i.e. for things that you want moving around. So yes, for a car, your mobile in your pocket, it's a useful thing. But storage of mass scale energy, which is what you need to power, say, this building, is actually not a sensible thing to do, use lithium. You need some other way of doing it. Now, one of the ways of doing it is to use green hydrogen. And that is something we have done a huge bet on. As a country, we are betting heavily on it.
Yes.
Now, I'm not certain that that will necessarily be a success. We can't be. But that's the risk we have taken. As a country, we are probably now, in terms of static hydrogen, static storage, at the cutting edge of this hydrogen technology. Our largest companies are investing in it. Tata's, Ambani's, Adani's. Everybody is heavily investing into this technology. Let's see what happens. There are other technologies as well. There is, you can also look at ion technology. Too heavy for carrying around, but for static storage may be okay. Similarly, there are whole debate on how to generate electricity, which is not linked to weather. For example, nuclear. I am a big believer that we should continue to pursue nuclear as being an additional form of energy. And certainly for the transition, we need to keep old energy alive as well. So I do think that we need to keep our thermal plants going for some time. We need to keep exploring in India. We need to continue to have relationships with suppliers of energy of all kinds, whether it's Australia or the Middle East. So for the time being, we need to maintain a mix. But the future has to be in areas where we have some sort of an advantage. As I said, sunshine is an advantage we have.
Yes.
But we also need to look at nuclear energy, particularly given that we are one of the few countries which have thorium. And we need to really get our act together on exploiting thorium as well.
Thank you. I know the time is flashing here, but I would like to give an opportunity to the audience to ask any questions to Mr. Sanyal. Can we pass the mic, please? I can see one hand
There's
there.
a lady there on the
Lady there on
extreme
this
right,
side.
and then
Yeah.
you can get a mic to her.
Yes.
And there's a gentleman there as well. So, mic to the lady there.
As they pass the mic.
Why don't you stand up so people can see? Yeah.
Yes,
We can get a
please.
mic to the lady there.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon to the bright minds there on the stage. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, Sanjeev sir.
You have to speak louder.
Okay. So my question is that because of the way this government has been functional for the past 1 decade, and because of people like you, we have, I guess, youth like me has kind of dwelled into an interest, and we also consider ourselves to be part of some nation who will have an impact if we have a way to contribute in our own self. So my question is that if we are coming from an IT background or a non-IT background or accounts or whatever it is, but how can we join hands directly with organizations like you who are fueling the engine that is eventually going to power our nation for the next decades?
So let me first say that this is a national project. It is not a government effort. So any effort you're making, it could be in academia, it could be in the private sector, you could be doing it in scientific labs. I don't know you personally, so I can't comment on what you can bring to the table. But look, this is a national effort. And putting in that effort anywhere in the system is good. You don't have to come into even if you think that there is something the government is can participate in it. Well, my doors are always open. You can come yourself, or you can bring in, you can route it through. There are lots of organizations, iSpirit, NASSCOM. There are companies that are willing to sort of provide you a platform. There are various IITs and other institutions. So however you wish, bring these issues up, talk about them loudly. There's always a lot of, the only thing I would say, look, the important thing is that you have to stand up and speak up, because we are a noisy country. So if you do not speak up, don't blame anyone for not hearing. Because I'm literally overwhelmed with information of all kinds. I mean, this is just technology. I have everything from culture to sports to fisheries that I'm getting feedback on, right? So you have to speak up. Don't fear that somehow we'll feel bad if you criticize government or not. No, we need that feedback. If you're doing something stupid, tell us. We'd rather hear it for you before than after. So be a part of that journey. And as I said, you can contribute to it anywhere you are in the country.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask question to Mr. Sanya? Yes, please.
So we'll be able to take one last question
One
in the
last
interest of
Somewhere on
time.
this side, there's somebody wanted to say something.
Anyone?
No?
You wanted to ask question? Or you
Yeah,
raising
give
your
it to the
hand?
gentleman
Yes.
there.
This gentleman, please.
With the camera, yeah.
हेलो हाय सर, अभी आपने ब्लॉकचेन रिलेटेड आपने कुछ बात कही एंड मैं उससे एग्री करता हूँ। मेरा सिंपल क्वेश्चन है कि ब्लॉकचेन स्टार्टअप्स को लेकर के गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया क्या सोच रही है, और कोई गवर्नमेंट एजेंसी है जहाँ पे हम ब्लॉकचेन को यूज होता हुआ इन फ्यूचर कहीं देख पाएंगे?
देखिए, ब्लॉकचेन एक टेक्नोलॉजी है, इसमें सरकार भी इसका इस्तेमाल करेगी, लेकिन ज्यादातर ये पब्लिक सेक्टर या में इस्तेमाल होगा। आप अगर सोचते हैं कि किसी टेक्नोलॉजी को बढ़ावा देने के लिए सरकार को ही उसका इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए, तो मैं सोचता हूं कि आपकी सोच ही गलत है। अगर गवर्नमेंट के बाबू लोग अगर टेक्नोलॉजी के फ्रंटियर में होंगे, तो मेरे ख्याल से वो बाबू क्यों हैं? वो इलॉन मस्क होना चाहिए उनको, ठीक कि नहीं? तो आप ब्यूरोक्रेसी के लिए रुकिए मत। आपके पास अगर कोई ऐसा कोई सोच है, कोई टेक्नोलॉजी है, उसके इस्तेमाल के लिए आपके कुछ आइडिया है, तो आगे बढ़िए। आपको कोई गवर्नमेंट से रोकता है तो हमको बताइए, लेकिन आपकी ये सोच नहीं हो सकती है कि सरकारी अफसर को टेक्नोलॉजी में रुचि होनी चाहिए, उसको बढ़ावा देना चाहिए, फिर ही जाके कहीं जाके टेक्नोलॉजी आगे बढ़ेगा। ये सोच शुरू से ही गलत है। मेरा काम है अफसरों को आपके रास्ते से हटाना, उनको आगे बढ़ावा देना नहीं है।
हेलो।
Thank you. So
All
on that
right,
punchy note, I would like to just ask two last questions. You're a prolific writer. And what are the top two books that you're reading today? And what are the podcasts that you regularly listen to?
Okay, I have a very random bunch of interests. So some people may. So I'm right now reading a book by Mervyn King called Uncertainty. And so it's a book he wrote about the problem of policy making in a world that is complete uncertainty. So he, of course, talks about his experience of managing the Bank of England during the 2007-8 crisis. And I myself have had experience of managing the economy through the COVID years and the banking cleanup and all of that of the recent years. So I was reading it because it's quite interesting, because I'm getting to read the mind of another policymaker as he went through that journey and comparing notes to my own experience of a somewhat different crisis, but still the problem of making decisions when you have a complete fog in front of you.
Right.
So that's one book I'm reading. Other than that, what do I watch? When I'm very late at night, I like watching these videos made by, and it's particularly popular abroad, but in India as well, on various forms of war tactics.
Okay.
Going back to ancient times to modern. So there is these bunch of people who use animation and other things. And they animate history.
Right.
And then it's quite interesting. I love watching them because it's quite interesting to see how people have thought about, the Hannibal won the Battle of Cannae, or how did, Napoleon win a certain war? What was he thinking? What was the other guy thinking? So I like doing that. That's great fun.
Thank you. I'm sure your next book will be on the war tactics. My guess is. Thank Mr. Sanyal to share your deep perspectives on variety of technology aspects as a policymaker lens. And it has been my pleasure hosting you today and interacting with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a big round of applause for indeed a spellbinding conversation that we witnessed? Thank you so much, Sri Sanjeev sir, for sharing your insights and for your benign presence at Date 2023. And Mr. Ranganath MD for beautifully spearheading that conversation. Would request you all to come together for a group photograph ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for them, everyone. Well, would request all our members of the audience to please take their seats again as we directly jump onto the first power panel of the day. So would request you all to take your seats.